The night the man sent back his food, Mara knew something had shifted, the kind of pressure change that makes a window hum before a storm. She felt it silvering through the room, making every fork pause midair, making the soft laughter go tight. Some messengers arrive with flowers. This one came with a plate. Before we begin, if this kind of story speaks to your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from. It's always beautiful to see how far stories like this can travel. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. The Plate and the Pass Anchors and Ash was the kind of restaurant that had a soul even on slow nights. It was all walnut wood rubbed thin by years of elbows, a black and white photo of a laughing woman taped near the espresso machine, and a chalkboard menu that made people feel like they were walking into a note someone wrote just for them. The place lived on little miracles, extra lemons left by the produce guy, a couple that paid in exact change but left a folded 5 under the sugar bowl, a neighbor who fixed the squeaky front door. The biggest miracle was Chef Luca, or what remained of him. "Fire up the halibut," Mara called, leaning through the small window in the wall, the pass that separated her world of words and smiles from his of heat and knives and quiet rage. Luca stood under the blaze of the salamander, his shadow made sharp by the lamps. His hair had gone silver at the temples, his hands shook just slightly, enough for those who watched him through service to love him harder. He had once been the name that could sell out a dining room by noon. A decade ago, one anonymous review, merciless, viral, articulate as a scalpel, had redirected his life. Pride and a kitchen fire had tunneled the rest. "Two halibut on," he said, voice steady. "Have you seen the guy at table 6, the baseball cap? He looks like he's counting his way out of the room." Mara had noticed him as he slid into the corner alone. A checkered shirt, clean hands, it was never the clothes with the upscale ones. It was the quiet, the way some people hung their silence like a coat wherever they went. "Yeah," she said. "Ordered the halibut, no substitutions, no talking, quick eyes." He ate through the starter, a bitter dandelion salad with charred apricots, what Luca called a conversation between smoke and sun. He drank water, he watched. When the halibut went out, it was seared until the crust had that deep gold that always made Mara think of coins. She walked it to the corner, smelled lemon, the blackened capers. "Hot plate," she said like a charm. The man gave her a quick smile that didn't move the rest of his face. He ate one clean bite, froze, chewed, the storm shifted. He set the fork down and flexed the fingers of his right hand like a pianist. "Is something wrong?" Mara asked, trying to catch his eyes and not the way her stomach had flipped. He lifted the plate a half-inch, as if returning it without speaking, then, with soft politeness that made her teeth itch, said, "Oversalted, I'm sorry, I can't eat this." In the kitchen you learn there are fears you can name and fears you feel in your bones. A dish sent back had a fear, a humiliation that reached through metal and steam and flicked what was left of Chef's dignity. She took the plate, felt the heat through her palm. "I'll take care of it," she said. By the time she stepped back to the pass, the room had learned, as rooms do. A woman ran a hand over the white cloth. A baby hiccuped and turned her face into her mother's shoulder. "The world is held together by pretending we don't know, service depends on it." Mara set the plate near the heat lamps. Luca didn't look up. "What's wrong?" he asked, voice careful. "Salt," she said. She said it like rain on a day that needed sun. He exhaled, something in him folding. "The capers are rinsed. The confit hasn't changed." He reached for the plate, took one bite, waited for his tongue to give him its map. Mara watched that fight he hid, the one where he questioned what he could no longer trust. He had never told her outright, but she knew since the fire tastes came to him as if through a wall. He cooked by memory and geometry and a prayer. "You know what salt is," he said softly to himself, then more loudly, "It's fine." "It's not fine to him," Mara said. She didn't say it like betrayal. She said it like a decision, because it was hers to make before the moment ran away. "I'll comp his meal, send out the braised fennel, a glass of—" "No." Her own voice surprised her. He put the plate down. He finally looked at her. "Don't let him think you misfired," she said. "I'll handle it. Mara, trust me." It was a warm night in late spring. They should have been busy. Instead, there were spaces between tables like unhealed wounds. The halibut steamed, elegant and wrong for a tongue that had made its judgment. She set the plate back under the lamp. The metal clanged. Everyone heard that too. She walked to table 6 with an empty tray and her best calm. The man's forearms were on the table. There was something ordinary about him that felt staged. Chef tastes every component, she said, a controlled sweetness in her voice. He swears the salt is right, but he also believes the guest gets to be right about their own tongue, so we can make you another halibut on the house. Or, she tilted her head as if sharing a secret. I can ask him to send something we serve only to friends, not on the menu. Trust me? He studied her. She met the gaze as if she had all night. Do you always answer like that? He asked. Only when I mean it. All right, he said. Show me what you serve your friends. Chapter 2, House Food. There is the food that sells and there is the food that heals. In the pantry fridge was a container of something that had changed the way Mara thought about hunger: soft eggs, just shy of set, the yolks carrying heat like dusk carries light. Luca spooned those eggs over a piece of charred sourdough rubbed with garlic and lemon zest, scattered herbs like confetti he was stingy with around strangers. He added a whisper of anchovy oil. He had made it once for Mara on a night she'd come in shaking from a fight with her landlord. The first bite had been like sitting down after standing for hours. Are you sure? He asked her now, bemused and terrified, this flip into house food in the middle of service. I'm sure, she said. No salt questions. She carried the plate to the man like a chalice. The room watched. He raised a brow. Toast. We call it salvation, Mara said lightly. She watched him bring the fork to his mouth, expectations falling like apples. The man closed his eyes, not with performative pleasure, not with the lust of a foodie, with something like recognition. When he swallowed, his jaw tightened the way people do when they are surprised by their own softness. What is that oil? He asked. Anchovy. But if you tell anyone, we'll deny it. He laughed, really laughed then, and she felt that maybe the storm had shifted again, this time toward leaving. In thanks, he asked for coffee. He drank it black and held the cup like an anchor. When he paid, he left a normal tip, a few bills tapped under the water glass. He glanced at the open kitchen window, and then he spoke in a tone that was at once casual and cutting, a sentence that would rattle around Mara's head for days. Some chefs get lost and never come home, he said. It's a kindness to tell them when the road has changed. She nodded, feeling protective heat rise in her chest. And some roads look different at night, she replied. He held her eyes, then stood and left. The door whispered closed on its tired hinge. A chair somewhere scraped. The world resumed pretending. What'd he say? Luca asked, only after the last guest had gone and the quiet had become safe. That he liked the eggs, Mara said. She turned to wipe the chalkboard and pretended she was reading the menu. She didn't tell him about the road. She didn't know if he needed one more ghost. Chapter 3. The eviction notice. The letter that arrived the next morning was real paper with unkind angles. Not the letter of this story, not the one that would split open a life. It was printed with a pale blue logo that made Mara think of clean glass and men with flawless shoes. It had the building owner's name at the top, Northlight Holdings, which made them sound like people who could catch sun and hold it in a vault. She tore it open with the butter knife because the office was out of letter openers. The notice was precise. Back rent 3 months, late fees. A deadline that felt like standing on a cliff. A sentence about legal recourse that made her throat sting. She carried it to Luca, who was zesting lemons with monastic attention. He had a way of reading bad news like a recipe, quietly tasting the ingredients as if he could alter the outcome with the right seasoning. How much? He asked. She told him. He nodded as if that number had been living in him already. I'll call them, he said. Chef, she said, we need a plan. He tapped zest into a silver bowl. Plan is dinner service. Plan is oxtail for Friday, slow cooked until even the bones sigh. Plan is hope? Hope isn't a plan. It's the only one we can prep without money. His hands were steady that morning, maybe because the stakes were so cleanly stated now, like a knife laid on a board. He made coffee like a rite. They drank it out of mismatched cups. Do you regret it? Mara asked him, surprising herself. Walking away from the big kitchens, from the everything, he blew on his coffee. I regret what I did to survive in them. What does that mean? He smiled without humor. Once I screamed so hard at a boy for misfiring a steak that he shook all night. He burned his hand and laughed because I had taught him that pain was better than failure. A writer called me surgical. It wasn't a compliment. I needed to leave before I became happy I had no skin. I like you with skin, Mara said, and then, unable to stop herself, we could do a community dinner. Pay what you can. Invite everyone we've ever fed for free. He tilted his head. We would be feeding people while drowning. Maybe they would float us. He studied her, the fierce, foolhardy way she kept tugging on the rope of this place. He had told her once in his careful way that persistence and stubbornness wore the same jacket. The difference was the pocket where you kept your fear. Okay, he said. Let's drown in public. Let's make it a party. Chapter 4. Two visitors on the night of the community dinner. Rain came sideways, the kind that makes a city look like it's remembering the ocean. People showed up anyway. Cooks from other kitchens, neighbors, a woman who'd had her first date here 3 years ago and was now married to a laugh. It was good. It looked like a rescue you see from far away. Table 6 was empty. It didn't stay that way. The man from the night before came again, same cap, rain on his shoulders like glitter. He took the corner and watched. He did not order. He waited until Mara saw him. You again, she said, giving him a smile like a coin. We're doing a little less salt tonight. No halibut? No halibut, but we have a lamb stew that could make your grandmother call her mother. He gave a half smile and nodded toward the kitchen. He looks tired. Don't we all? May I buy him a drink? He asked. You can buy him rent if you want, she said. The joke wasn't as light as she meant it. He blinked at her fast, like a surprised child. They fed him stew and a hunk of bread. He ate slowly, as if in conversation with it. When he paid, he tipped again in exact math, the kind that people who like control prefer. But this time, he left a second envelope, small and heavy, addressed to Mara if she'll accept it. She found it at the end of the night when the tables had the wreckage of a feast and someone somewhere let out the sea sound of a laugh after crying. Her name in ink, the weight of something more than paper. The flap was sealed with dark wax, a pearled W impressed in it. Her heart performed a trick that felt like hope and foreboding together. Who's it from? Luca asked, wiping down the pass as if it still had heat. She turned it in her hands. I don't know, she said. I'm not sure I want to. Then wait, he said, surprising her. Let it be heavy for a while. She put it in the drawer with the dull knives. All night she heard it like a heartbeat. The second visitor came when the music had been turned off and the rain had slackened to a whisper. He was a man in a hard hat and a city jacket with his name on it, a kindness in his eyes that couldn't camouflage what he carried. Evening, he said. We've had complaints about the wiring. You've got to fix the panel. If a fire inspector comes and sees this, you'll lose the space. We can't afford a panel, Luca said honestly. You can't afford a fire either. They stood in the doorway together, 3 people balanced on something that could give way. The city man tipped his hat like an apology and left. Mara closed the door and locked it as if that could keep consequences out. Open it, Luca said suddenly, nodding at the drawer. Whatever it is. Chapter 5. The letter. Mara broke the wax with her fingernail. It cracked like a seed. Inside was heavy paper that smelled like the kind of money you're not supposed to talk about. There was a letter in a careful hand, the kind that looks like someone who writes often and always means it. Mara, you don't know me. In a way, neither does anyone. I saw how you stood at that pass and made a choice. I have spent a lot of my life watching choices and seeing what they cost. Most plates sent back are about control. That night, you handed me something else, a boundary that wasn't cruelty, a loyalty that didn't blind you, an invitation to try again without shame. What you did took courage. It took even more the next night when you made a joke about rent because you are tired of pretending that certain structures don't sit at every table, eating too. Your honesty landed like a fork. I own this building. I didn't come as an owner. I came as a man who hides to watch, because hiding is a habit I have had since long before I had money. I own too much of this city in ways that make me uneasy at the mirror. I can sell it and forget faces, or I can look, so I do both in different clothes. I also arrived under a different false name. Years ago, I wrote a review that broke a man. I wrote it under the name Cedar Mask. That name is famous for a certain cruelty, which is to say, for my own unhealed rage. The city loved how sharp I was when I descended from the balcony and judged. I told myself I was protecting standards. Maybe on my best days I was. On my worst, I was punishing the kitchens where men did what they wanted because they thought fire made you God. I never considered the collateral. I wrote about Chef Luca as if a person's mouth was a battlefield and he had lost a war. If you want to hate me, I have already done that work for you. Here is the part that is not penance but is trying to be repair. Enclosed are two papers. One is the deed to this building, signed into a trust whose beneficiary is the House of Hands, to be organized by the person I saw last night who knows how to ask for help without shame. That would be you if you accept. The condition is that you take care of this place and the people in it as if you were holding their faces in your hands. If you ever sell, proceeds go to an apprenticeship fund for anyone who has burned their way out of a kitchen. The second is a letter addressed to Luca that I cannot deliver myself. Not because I am a coward, though yes, there is that, but because I have learned something about how we receive confession. It is often easier to say, I forgive you to a stranger than to someone who has become the voice inside your own head. He never knew who wrote that review. He will now. He deserves the truth from a mouth that doesn't flinch. I do not expect forgiveness. I expect nothing. But I wanted to hand the tool to someone who would wield it without making it a weapon. You seem like someone who does not love knives even when you carry them. If you refuse, burn this letter. If you accept, meet me tomorrow noon at the greenhouse on Lark Street, windows blown out, vines doing what they've always done without permission. I'll bring papers you can have a lawyer look at. I'll bring coffee. I'll bring a story that might make you understand why men like me send back food. E. Ward there was, impossibly, a bank draft tucked inside with numbers that looked like make-believe. There was also a smaller envelope with Lucas' name on it, and a business card, sparse, Elias Ward, Northlight. Mara stared until the letters blurred, the room around her tilted. What is it? Luca asked, his hands already damp as if his body knew. She held out the door. Less roof, less thing this was. He says he owns the building. He says he's... Cedar mask. Silence. Real silence, the kind that makes even the refrigerators hold their breath. Luca took the envelope with his name. He touched it to his chest without opening it, like a blessing and a wound. He smoothed his palm over the paper as if smoothing a bed for an injured child. I think I have to meet him, Mara whispered. You do, Luca said. And your letter? He shook his head sharply. Not now, please. I need to not hear his voice in this room while my knives are on the wall. She slid the smaller envelope back in the drawer. The neat W in wax glinted like a coin at the bottom of a fountain. Chapter 6, Greenhouse Lark Street had been empty of birds for years, a spine of glass ribs and weeds in sneakers. The greenhouse sat at the far end of the block like the skeleton of a cathedral, ivy threading the panes. Mara went because she had already decided not going would haunt her worse. He was there, cap off this time, hair too neat to be poor, eyes tired in that particular expensive way. He held 2 cups in a biodegradable carrier as if that made the coffee gentler. He smiled without teeth. Thank you for coming, he said. Tell me why, she said. Because when I was 5, my mother brought home dinner in white paper boats that smelled like fryer oil and salt. We ate on the couch. She was a waitress. She smelled like other people's hunger. She put coins in an envelope in the freezer because she didn't trust banks. Once, a man told her she had refilled his water wrong and sent back his fries. She came home and cried, not because of the fries, but because she felt invisible and seen at once in the worst possible way. When I built my company, I sent people back what they gave me. I returned their bad faith with precision. I became very good at it. Then I got rich and realized I had built a machine that could turn a habit into a city. Buying buildings felt like gathering power into my arms and testing if my arms could hold it. They could. Then one day, I read a review under the name Cedar Mask that I had written at 2 a.m., angry at a man I didn't know for being exactly who I had been, a genius with no empathy. It went viral. I watched his restaurant close. The city sent me flowers. I thought about my mother's water glass. I wanted to undo something. You can't undo, but sometimes you can start again. Why me? She asked. Because you know where to put your anger. Because you said no when you needed to, gently, without making me feel like a weapon. Because you kept your restaurant from making a spectacle out of a wound. Because when you joked about rent, I felt the exact size of your need and the exact size of your dignity, and I thought, I can pour a bucket of money on this. It will help, but it will also drown them if no one they trust holds the handle. I don't know if I trust you, she said. As you should. Do you want me to keep your secret? She asked. No, he said, startling her. Secrets are how men like me stay unblooded. I want you to deliver the letter and watch whatever happens and then do the next thing. If the next thing is hate me, so be it. If the next thing is take the deed and make a church out of that kitchen, I will witness. If the next thing is hand it all back and kick me out, I will sign papers and still think you were right. He handed her a folder. It was heavy enough to bruise. Get a lawyer, he said. This isn't a trap, but if it feels like one, make me explain to your face every word. She took the folder because she is the sort of person who will always shoulder the heaviest part of the load first to see if she can stand it. He put the coffee on the low wall. A bird landed in the rusted beam above them, shook water out of its feathers. One more thing, he said. I'm selling a portfolio of buildings next month. This one is in it. I wanted to make sure this wasn't a casualty of my convenience. You could just not sell it. I could, he said. He looked at his hands. Some people need burning bush moments to change direction. I need someone to stand at a pass and tell me I'm wrong without leaving the room. She didn't smile. But she felt it, that half-light of forgiveness, not for him yet, but for a world where men like him sometimes did not do the worst thing they could because a waitress put a plate down gently and called toast salvation. Chapter 7, Fire They Didn't Tell Anyone. They couldn't. There were papers to read and sign. There were lawyers to ask dumb-looking questions with brave mouths. There was one letter to deliver, and they kept not doing it, the way people don't open closets where the smell of smoke is still the strongest. The fire started not in the kitchen but in the office, a small electrical cough behind the breaker panel. It was a Tuesday afternoon prep shift. Mara saw it because she was looking for paper towels. She pulled the alarm, shouted out, without thinking of anything but lungs. The staff ran to the alley panting, eyes big with the old animal fear. Luca grabbed the fire extinguisher and did what he always did with heat and disaster, stepped into it. The spray hissed like a snake. Someone dialed. The sirens didn't take long. The fire didn't have time to write itself into the walls. After, they stood in the street watching steam rise from the damp cardboard of their life. The firefighters were kind. One of them shook her head when she saw the panel, the way you shake your head at a cliff someone keeps picnicking under. Mara put a hand on Luca's back. We can't open, he said, voicing the obvious like a spell. I know. Insurance will take weeks. I know. And the rent? She took the smaller envelope from her bag. It had lived there like a heart for 3 days. She placed it in his hands. Then now, she said, before we have to hear our names in other mouths, let's put our own names where they belong. He held the letter. He looked at her. He nodded. He broke the wax. It wasn't long. It was careful. It said what it needed to, like a dish with perfect restraint. Luca, what I did to you was beyond criticism. It was cruelty. I can say I saw things worth breaking in the way you ran your kitchen. Maybe I did. But the language I used was violent because I was a violent man with words. I didn't know what that would cost you. That ignorance should terrify us more than malice. I hope you have found a way to cook without me in your head. If you haven't, I hope the room in your head has a window you can open now. I am handing the building to someone who loves your food more than she loves your legend. Please let her be the reason this place continues. If you need to hate me, I will accept it. If you ever want an apology spoken out loud, I will come. If you don't, I will stay a mouth in a letter and be grateful. Elias Ward, Cedar Mask. Luca read it as if tasting each word. He folded it with exacting care. He did not tear it. He did not throw it. He looked up at the charred edge of the office wall. The smell of burnt plastic braided through steam. The worst thing, he said, voice small, is that there were parts of that review that were true. I was cruel. I was clever enough to make people think that was an ingredient. Once, Mara said, you told me the difference between char and burnt was the moment you took your hand away. You could have become what he said. You took your hand away. Too late for the boy, he said. There were so many boys. There was only ever one at a time when you were yelling. What do you want to do? She asked. About him, about this building. He looked at the letter. At her, at his hands, they were steady. As steady as they had been before the fire that had changed the way he tasted the world. I want to cook dinner, he said. Not tomorrow, not the day after, but soon. I want to write a menu that doesn't pretend I am still 35 in a white jacket pretending not to cry when I get home. I want to maybe, he cleared his throat like pushing bone. I want you to cook beside me sometimes. I want you to make your eggs and call them what you call them. I want to put your name on the menu and mine next to it, smaller. She had never wanted something so much that it hurt. She did not reach for him, she just nodded. And him? She asked. He took a breath that sounded like letting go. Let him sign the deed. Let him come eat. Let him pay the electrician and then get out of my restaurant. Let him keep his mouth closed while we feed people. Deal, she said. Chapter 8, the first service when they reopened, they did it without spectacle. No Instagram confetti, no press release with words like reimagined. The lights were smoother, the outlets didn't spark. The smell of smoke was gone, replaced by the lemon they rubbed onto the wood so the room felt like it was licked clean. On the chalkboard, Mara wrote, Anchor and Ash, a house with too many hands to count. Underneath, she wrote a menu that felt like a letter, too: charred bread with soft eggs and anchovy oil salvation. Stewed lamb with cinnamon and green olives memory. Halibut with lemon and blackened capers try me. Dandelion salad with apricots smoke and sun. Oxtail on Friday for whoever needs it. In small letters, if money is tight, your tongue is still invited. Ask Mara quietly, we have you. They served the first halibut to a woman who confessed shyly that she had been nervous to order it. You'll be gentle, Mara said. We're gentler now. The woman smiled as if releasing a secret. He came on the third night, not hiding, not advertised. He tipped the doorman. He didn't wear a cap. He took the corner and sat with hands folded like a kid facing a principal. He watched Luca work with a moved restraint that made Mara wonder if he often watched people he had harmed grow past him. Mara walked over without a menu. Are you hungry? She asked. I am, he said. She brought him the eggs. He ate them. He did not speak. She brought him halibut. He ate carefully, eyes damp. He lifted his water glass. Not too salty? She asked, smiling like a knife that had decided to slice only peaches. He shook his head. It tastes like forgiveness, he said. He left a tip too big to be decent and a small note that said, Electrician paid. That was all. That and a donation to the House of Hands that made Mara imagine long tables and apprentices and old cookbooks like family Bibles. In the back, just before 9:30, Luca handed her his knives, wrapped in a cloth that had been a white shirt once. Hold them, he said. They're mine, but hold them. When will you want them back? She asked. When you've blunted them on the bones of 1,000 onions, he said. When you've nicked your thumb and learned to curse without cruelty, when you've burned and pulled your hand away at just the right moment. She held them and felt how heavy joy can be. Chapter 9, the visit 3 months into the new life, a woman came in with a boy who stared at the salt bowl with fascination. The boy wore a paper crown from a cake box. It was his birthday. We need something special, the mother said, but he is picky. Mara knelt so her eyes were level with his. What does picky mean? She asked him. The boy grinned and said shyly, toast. She laughed. Then you've come to the right house. She took them the eggs and called it salvation. She watched the boy close his eyes at the first bite like a man in a corner once had, the same pool of recognition, the same unfancy grace. She felt the circle close without being a coin, without even being a circle, more like a spiral, a way forward that looped back just enough to remind you of the road. Luca watched from the pass, shoulders soft. He nudged the salt bowl closer to her and said, You should write a menu note about how some meals are just hands and eggs. You write it, she said. He took the chalk and printed slowly, trying not to get the dust on his sleeves. Above the menu he wrote, There are nights when the road changes. If you miss the turn, we left the porch light on. The room went quiet in that way it does when words go up on a wall and suddenly people are reading themselves. Chapter 10. A second letter when the next letter came, months later, it arrived wearing summer. It was in an envelope thick as a throat and sealed with a W again, though the wax was a softer blue now, less like a bruise and more like sky. Mara opened it in daylight, not in crisis, sitting on the back steps where the herbs tried very hard and the alley cat pretended not to need anyone. Mara, I am taking my money and going to sit beside a lake for a year, perhaps longer. I have asked men I trust to sell the things I should not have bought. Some money will land in places like your house. Some will be given back to people who did not ask for the damage they received from me while I was calling it truth. I came in last week and sat in the corner and watched a boy eat toast. The room felt like a church. It felt like a small rebellion against the idea that only sharpness is valuable. The electrician came back with his wife and smiled at your sign about the porch light. Thank you for delivering my letter. Thank you for letting me fix one thing and learn how many other things I cannot fix with money. Thank you for making food that tastes like the road home, even for men like me. Do not put my name on any of it. Put the names of the women who taught you how to turn a knife, of the boys you do not want to break because if you break them, you will have to cook for their ghosts forever. If you ever need me to sit in a hearing, to sign a paper, to talk to someone who thinks they own the world, send me a letter. I'll come. Elias P.S. I can't fix what I broke in you, Luca, but I can promise this: I will never again mistake destruction for discernment in public. If that makes me a weaker man to some, let it be. She turned the page over, expecting money. There was none. Just a photograph, candid, blurred a little, of the room on a night when the sunlight had made the glassware glow and a woman in a floral dress had laughed with her mouth wide open. In the corner of the photo, Mara could see her own hand delivering a plate. It looked like it was holding a story. She showed the letter to Luca. He read it and nodded and said only, "Good. Good that a man could stop. Good that sometimes questions are enough." Chapter 11, the last service in the old year. On the last night of the year, they did a menu that was both stubborn and kind. No truffles, no towers of things that fall apart the minute someone breathes. They served the stew. They served the eggs, because some people need saving on nights when everyone insists they are happy. At 9, the door opened and a younger version of Luca walked in, not in age, in posture. He was a line cook from a kitchen down the road whose chef was famous for hitting the stainless with his palms so hard that knives jumped. The boy was shaking in the way that had made Luca leave the big rooms. "You hiring?" he asked. "We're always hiring hands," Mara said. "We don't hire mouths that bite." He looked at her, unsure if this was real. She took his bag and led him in. She put him at the salad station with a woman who had been a dentist in another life. He cut apricots slowly. He did not jump when someone shouted "behind," because no one shouted it like violence here. At midnight, they opened the window by the pass to let in the cold. People shouted. Someone kissed someone inappropriate and was forgiven. In the corner, a man lifted a water glass and tapped it to his mouth like a prayer. He could have been anyone. Mara stood at the door, the chalk dusty on her fingers. She looked at the sign, the House of Hands, a deed signed into a trust, a letter folded neatly in a drawer with other documents and some beloved nonsense. It felt like an anchor. It felt like ash. It felt like both the things they had named themselves after on purpose. She thought of the plate that came back. She thought of the way her body had known before her brain that some storms are messages. There are nights, she would later tell anyone who asked, when the entire world is a pass and someone sets something in front of you and says, "This is not to my taste." And you can apologize, or you can argue, or you can serve them salvation. You can also serve yourself justice. Chapter 12. After years later, when people told the story, they did it wrong. They made the millionaire a hero because he signed papers that had been his to sign all along. They made the chef a tragic figure because it made their own softness seem noble. They made the waitress an angel because it was easier than admitting that she had been sometimes unkind, sometimes desperate, sometimes the one who left the freezer open and ruined the gelato. The truth was better than any of those myths. The truth was that three flawed people met each other in a room with heat and oil and the particular humility that comes from making dinner for strangers. They made bad choices and then good ones. They told each other the truth on paper and in person and with plates. They did not save the city. They saved a room. Sometimes that is enough. On a Tuesday in an ordinary spring, a man sent back toast because the edges were too char for his kid. The server at the pass took the plate and did not feel rage, only seriousness. She walked into the kitchen and said to the cook at the grill, "Lighter on the heat. The kid is 5. The cook nodded, grateful not to be shamed for the obvious. Luca touched Mara's elbow as she turned to go. "We did it," he said, and meant it very simply. "Saved ourselves, saved our kindness, saved the way we wanted to feed." She smiled, and her mouth knew the shape of 1,000 meals and 1,000 moments when she had decided to refuse someone else's definition of what inside a kitchen felt like. At the end of the night, in the drawer where she kept dull knives and the first letter with the W, there was a new envelope. No wax, no deed. Inside, a scrap of paper torn from a notebook. Mara, I ate the toast you served my boy when I was a boy and thought kindness was a trick. Thank you for living long enough into your own answer that I could hear it from here. She read it on the back steps with the herbs. She didn't know how it got there. A man had his ways. She folded it and slid it next to the deed and the business cards of electricians, and the photo of the laughing woman near the espresso machine who they had finally learned was Lucas' sister, the one who had taken him out of the burning kitchen once and told him to breathe with her in the alley until they both found the rhythm of their lives again. The rhythm now was this: the world sending back what it couldn't eat, them sending back kindness and boundaries and plates that sometimes hit the tongue like a home you didn't know you had until it was in your mouth. You can't forgive the past because it isn't food. But sometimes, someone hands you a letter that tastes like repair. Sometimes you write it yourself by staying in the room. Sometimes you go to the pass and choose salvation. And if you are very lucky, the road you find has a porch light at the turn that had once been so easy to miss. In the lobby, under the soft chalk dust, someone had traced another sentence below Lucas and no one erased it. Protect the ones who cook for you. People ran their fingers over it when they left like a blessing, like a promise they were willing to carry out into the dark, where all the other stories were still trying to find their way home.